All right, let's talk about multiplying decimals. If you haven't seen multiplying fractions, you should look at that first. If you have not checked out adding and subtracting decimals, you should check that out first. Um, but what we're going to talk about now is multiplying decimals. And I'll remind you what multiplication is. It's just repeated addition, right? So if I were to say multiply 3 times 2, right? I'm just either adding 2 3 times, right? It's right in there, times, or adding 3 2 times, okay? And both get me to the same answer. Actually, all of them do, right? The same result of 6. Well, let's talk about decimals, okay? And because we're into rational numbers, we're talking both positive and negatives. So let's start with the positives and just see if we can remember how this works. Okay, so if I were to say I want to multiply 2.1 times 3.5, let's say. Okay? And remember, anytime that we put a number up against a parentheses here, that implies multiplication. Right? That's the implied operation. I could also write it with 2 parentheses. I could also have written it this way with the dot. And this is where you can see when I'm using all these decimals how it starts to get confusing when you're looking at all these dots. There's a dot here, a dot up here, a dot over there. Okay, whereas the parentheses make it very clear. Right? So I prefer that, especially when we're dealing with decimals. So I'm going to multiply. All right, well, how do I multiply decimals? The long way, well, we can plug it into a calculator. That's certainly easy enough. But we can also do this the long way. And all we do is instead of, in this case, it's going to line up the same way. But instead of worrying about where the decimals line up, we want to line up the last numbers. Okay? So we're not adding 0 to anything. Okay? So if you look here, we would just then multiply, and we're multiplying 2 positives. And then we apply all the rules of multiplying integers, positives and negatives. The same rules apply. Okay, so if we multiply the same sign, two of the same sign, you're going to end up with a positive. If you multiply 2 different signs, you're going to end up with a negative. In this case, it's all positive. And then we just multiply like we normally would. So we do 1 times 5, and we get 5, right? And then we get 5, we do 5 times 2, which is 10. Then we bring down a 0. We do 3 times 1, which is 3, and 3 times 2, which is 6. We add those together, and we get 5, 3, 7. Okay, now here's where does the decimal go? That's the big question. And what I do is I look at how many digits are on the right side of the decimal point. So I look at the decimal point, and so I've got 1 there and 1 there. That's 2. 2 decimals. What I do then is I would move the decimal point 1, 2, right? And I end up with 7.35. And if you think about it, okay, 2.1 times 3.5. If you were just to think about it mentally, I would think, 2 times 3.5 would be 7. So 0.1 is, just a little bit more than 7. So if I ended up with 73.5, I'm thinking, well, 2 times 3.5 is 7. So I got off somewhere. Okay? But just remember, you're going to count how many digits to the right of the decimals. Okay? And you're going to add up all of those digits, however many they are. You're not going to add them together. You're just going to add up how many there are and move the decimal place over. Let's do another one, and I'm going to add, I'm going to add in a negative. So let's take negative 1.54 times 3.2. Okay? All right, so I'm dealing with a positive and a negative. And so when I am multiplying a positive and a negative, I'm going to end up with a negative. So I already know that. So I'm just going to go ahead and put my line down here and put a negative down here. And then I don't have to think about that anymore. And then I just multiply these two together. I prefer to put the more digits up at the top, okay, just because it's less to deal with, all right? And then 3.2, okay. And so what I'll do is I'm actually going to end up with, I'm going to have to add stuff together and then do the final negative. So I just start multiplying like I normally would. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1 is 3. So I with 308, I'm kind of drawing too big here. All right, let's do this. Okay, and then go to the next one. I add the 0 there because I'm starting in the next thing. I can do 3 times 4, which is 12. 3 times 5, which is 15 plus 1, which is 16. Put the 1 back up there. 3 times 1 is 3 plus 1 is 4. Okay, I add these together, and then I'm going to get my negative number, okay, to start with. So 8 plus 0 is 8. 0 plus 2 is 2. 3 plus 6 is 9. And 4. Okay, so I've got negative 4928. Okay, now do I have negative 4,928? Do I have negative 492.8? Do I have negative 49.28? Do I have negative 4.928? Do I have negative point? What is my thing? Oh yeah, I've got to go back to my original. Okay, and I've got a lot of gobbledygook in here because I was showing you. But remember, here's the decimals, and then I'm going to count. I've got 1, 2, 3 digits total that are to the right of a decimal point. And that's how many I go back over. 1, 2, 3. And so then if I clean this up, it's negative 4.928. Okay, does that make sense? Well, 3.2, what's 1.5 times 3? That'd be like 4.5, right? Because like 1.5 plus 1.5 is 5, plus 1.5 is 4.5. So that seems about right. I'm in the right vicinity. Okay, I got my decimal place in the right spot. Okay, we can check it with a calculator if we want. All right, let's do one last one. Okay, and we're going to do 4.21. Oh, sorry, let's do negative 4.21 times negative 3.1. Okay, and we're going to do just a similar thing. Now, first off, all I need to think about is I'm multiplying two negatives. Okay, and if you look here, I've got a negative here and a negative here. And when I multiply two of the same sign, I get a positive. So I already know right off the bat I'm going to get a positive. So I'm just going to kind of eliminate those negative signs and just multiply like I normally would. 4.21, 3.1. Remember, I'm lining up the right-hand side, not lining up the decimals. Okay? Just lining up the right-hand side. All right. Let's go through it. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 4 is 4. All right. Simple enough. Add the 0 there. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 4 is 12. Okay. Then I'm going to add these up. 1, 2 plus 3 is 5. 4 plus 6. Remember, when you're doing this, don't get confused as to the multiplication. Don't multiply again. This part we're adding. Okay, because basically what we did was we broke it up into two multiplication problems. 3.0 times 4.21 and 1.1 times 4.21 and adding them together. So we just took it into two chunks. So 4 plus 6 is 10. 1 plus 2 is 3. And there we go. Now, we find the decimal points. And 1, 2, 3 digits. So we move the decimal point over 1, 2, 3, and we get 13.051. Okay? Which makes sense because 4 times 3 is 12, right? So it looks like we're in the right spot. Okay, so it's just a way of checking. You can also check with your calculator if you need to, but that's just a way of mentally checking. Oh, does that make sense? All right, so there you go.